New research is shining a light on why Americans do not trust people in positions of power, and presidential hopefuls Cory Booker and Julian Castro will drop out of the race if they do not make the next debate stage.
Team Rising is here to weigh in. Colin Rojero, Democratic strategist. Emily Jashinsky is a culture editor at The Federalist. Welcome to you both.
Simon says your name with such finesse.
He does.
There,
well done, sir.
it.
So nobody ever gets it that done
a native
that
Texan,
well.
so you know.
Well done.
I've got a little bit of that.
Well
in me.
done.
So this is the one thing that we're very interested in, which is Julian Castro sends an email to supporters, says he has to make the next debate or he's going to drop out. Cory Booker has said exactly the same thing. I mean, this is enjoying the radical honesty from these candidates. But B, I mean, it really is, I think it's actually a loss for some of the debate, particularly to have Julian Castro not there because he was such a force in that last debate. What do you think, Colin?
Yeah, he's made an impact on them.
He really was. But look, you know, the rules have been set out, and you know, you got to play on the field that's laid in front of you. And you know, you don't really cry about it. You either choose to play on the field and you play, or you don't. Yeah. So I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for them. I think he'll probably end up making it. We'll just have to see.
So Emily, everybody in the media predicted Julian's demise. I know he didn't see. I don't think he took much of a hit in the polls.
Well,
everyone was like,
not
that there was a hot hit to be taken, but everyone was like, oh, you know, Democratic voters are going to revolt against Julian Castro. Did that bear out, and should he be on the debate stage?
I believe he said that his best fundraising hours were the ones immediately after his hit on Biden. And so, no, I mean, I think this is exactly what the DNC wanted to happen with this third debate, that raise the threshold just up enough that you kind of clear some of the brush here. You get some of the people who are not catching on out of it, and they can focus on really like the top 6, 7, 8.
And the next criteria, I was just confirming it here in our notes, is candidates have to be at 3% or higher in at least 4 national polls or early state polls, or 5% in 2 early state polls. So just upping the polling threshold just that little bit can really make a big difference. I mean, it's interesting. I hadn't really thought of it before, but there was all this, Castro's attack on Biden's going to backfire. It's going to be terrible. Didn't really impact Castro too much, but Biden has sort of continued to decline since that debate. So I'm not sure that the pundits were right when they said he had a great performance either.
Yeah, look, I think Biden's, started with the highest name ID, and he started with the strongest amount of support, but nobody ever really gauged how strong it was and how solid it was. It was a soft level of support, and a lot of support that, is reminiscent of his time as vice president. So we've started to see that softening happen. I think it was inevitable.
The real question, though, is, Emily, do these debates actually matter? Or is this all just what plays out within the national media? Yes, the spotlight, people get a bump, this and this. Elizabeth Warren, I don't think, is rising because of her debate performances. She's rising because of a variety of factors, Kamala's fall, but also just like her national campaign, the amount of money that she's raising. How do you think the debates actually play into this?
Well, you could actually argue that Kamala Harris's fall is something that was impacted heavily by the debate.
We believe that.
It's a mix, right? So if you're doing really well on the ground in early states, then you will be buoyed by that. But at the same time, if you're not performing in debates, it can hurt you if you have a really, really bad moment. I mean, I don't think debates are the be-all, end-all. I don't think that they're, sink or swim. But if you have a really good moment, or if you have a really bad moment, that's where, at those margins,
it really is on the tail.
Warren has been solid in every debate.
Yes.
And
which
so
is
it's confirmed this view that she's got a solid campaign, she's a solid candidate, et cetera. With Booker, the thing that's interesting to me about him is early on in the race, when we would talk to people in Iowa, they would say, Cory Booker has the best operation on the ground. Keep an eye on him. He has the most endorsements, at least according to him, of any candidate in Iowa and New Hampshire, and yet hasn't amounted. It really is an argument for how the rules of the road have changed, how politics and campaigning in this era are completely different, and those traditional markers of success just don't count for what they used to.
He had a good debate performance too.
He did. But I think look, campaigns have become much more comprehensive. They're
not national.
They have been. They're much more like a brand actually presenting itself to the public now than just hey, we're getting these certain markers in Iowa, and we've got an advertising campaign that supports that.
Almost
They're
none of the endorsements matter. There's a couple, like we talked about, I think AOC's endorsement between Warren and Bertie, I think that matters. Like, there's a few,
endorsements,
but mostly
endorsements don't have. I mean, there are very few endorsements that actually matter.
AOC and Obama.
Exactly.
Well said. Culinary Union in Nevada. That's
a big one. That still matters.
They are the kingmakers.
Absolutely.
But we've also got very interesting new polling out from Pew. It's about why Americans don't fully trust those who hold positions of power. It actually shows quite a bit of an increase there. It shows that people don't think that their members of Congress are honest. They don't think that journalists act ethically or are honest. Technology companies, religiously. I mean, all the way down the line, this really is ultimately what it is the tale of declining trust in American institutions over and over again over the years. Now, Emily, the way I'm reading this is that it's just like 2016 all over again. That even though Trump is in power, even though this anti-establishment wave has kind of come and everyone says, oh, it's reached its top, I think it's just continued on the Democratic side. Why is it that that anti-establishment bubbling is there? And also, what does it mean for the election?
You mean anti-establishment bubbling on the left?
Well, both.
Everywhere.
Yeah,
I mean, this is universal.
Right.
Nobody trusts anyone.
Trump's election didn't actually solve anything. The country still hates all American institutions.
Right. No, and it's actually only gotten worse.
Yes.
And, coming from the right, I mean, there was something very hopeful about that day after the election in November 2016 being like, this has to be a reckoning.
Yeah, right.
This has to be a reckoning for the media. It has to be a reckoning for Washington. I think it's actually gotten worse. I think all of the various controversies, the Russia theory was, I mean, that's on the right, it's just been huge. It's only going to make things worse. And on the left, when you see what's happening, I mean, the way the liberal media covers Trump, you can see how that's sowing. I think in some instances, a very rightful anti-establishment sentiment on the left as well.
Well, and the way they cover Bernie Sanders.
Yes,
I mean, it's just anyone who's not in like the mainstream establishment, they just take out the knives for.
The Intercept does some of the best media criticism.
We're fans of it.
Some of the best media criticism.
You know, Colin, Michael Lewis actually has an interesting theory on this thing, which I think is fascinating to think about. He digs into sports in particular and says with social media, like if there's a bad call, whereas before people might not even notice it, it would sort of come and go and people would move on. Now they've got the frame by frame, it's shared, it goes viral. And so even though, you know, by the numbers, and he points out by the numbers, sports refereeing has actually gotten better, people have so much more mistrust of the referees and like ref sucks is such a more because it's just so much fixated on, which I thought was really interesting and something I hadn't thought about.
Look, I think it's an absolutely true kind of reference point because, you know, with the democratization of media via social outlets, right, people have the ability to kind of pull the wool back and find out more, and they receive more information. And maybe the more information you receive about certain things, the less you actually like or trust them. You know, and I think, look, you know, speaking to what you said, you know, in November 2016, probably for a lot of people on the right, you know, they came in and said, oh my God, this is a wave. Well, people thought that in 2008 with Obama as well. And it hasn't happened either way. So I'm not very surprised that people are still saying, hey, these institutions aren't exactly what we wanted.
I mean, it may not be a bad thing that people, you know, I mean, honestly, like we were talking in the break about this New York Times article where they claimed to interview these swing voters, but they were actually consistent Republican voters that they'd interviewed before. In a previous era, no one would have noticed. Right now, it's a thing. Like people notice and they share it, and it becomes talked about. And it's another way people go, you know what? These people don't know everything, and they don't get everything right.
Right. And again, that's a media story, and I think so much distrust in this country. We've seen some Democratic faith in media rise actually over the Trump presidency, but I think if you're looking at independents and you're looking at people on the right, faith in media is just so low that it's causing problems that aren't just with media coverage. I mean, they go so much deeper than that.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
All right, stick with us.
Sit tight. We're going to come right back.